Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Plunderbund.
Plunderbund is brought to you by Hutchu Games. It plays 2 to 5 players, ages 12 and up, and each game takes between 90 and 180 minutes to play.
Great, well let's go do some back alley deals in the city known as the Sprawl. Plunderbund is all about black market wheeling and dealing. In this Prohibition era town known as the Sprawl, you take on the roles of like elves, orcs, wizards, and you have agents and racketeers, all in an effort to be the biggest, baddest boss in town. Now, setup here is pretty straightforward and quick. Based on the player count will determine which side of the board you're going to use. Now, also based on the player count will determine which merchants are locked out for this game. Now, they're not permanently locked out, but we will take a look at that in a minute. Now, there are several tracks to take note of. You have your turn track, which is seasonal. And then you have your reputation track around the board, which is your victory points throughout the game. And then you have your competition tracks, and these are located on the sides of the board. Now, the thing here is that you're going to take your player cubes and put them at all the start positions for all the tracks.
At the beginning of the game, each player will be given a player mat in his character's color. Each player will also be given the same set of 8 cards with which they will start. These represent the characters in your guild through whom you will perform a variety of actions in your attempt to kind of take over the turf and ultimately try to become the big boss. You'll also take your remaining 2 cubes. You've put most of these on the various starting positions around the board, but you take the remaining 2 and place one here on your player mat, indicating your starting hand is only a 5, and you can eventually move this up over the course of the game. And your exchange rate from goods to favors is 4 to 1. And again, you can move that up throughout the game.
Right.
The last thing you'll be given is a set of figures, and these figures represent your agents and racketeers.
Indeed. The racketeers, I have to say, I'm a little partial to. They're wearing the flat cap.
They're wearing the exact same hat that Mark is. So,
and it's important to note that these figures that we're using for this prototype are the deluxe figures. Yeah. So it's part of the deluxe package.
Now, if you don't get the deluxe package, you'll just get meeples, and their hats won't be nearly as cool as this one and Mark's.
Cap. It's all about flat cap. So the game is played over the course of 12 months, and each month is divided into 6 phases. The first phase we're going to look at is generate demand. And what you're going to do here is reach into the bag of coins, demand coins basically, and these coins are going to be pulled out and placed to the merchants that are open, that are currently open. Again, this bag would have been set up based on the player count, because you don't want to pull demand coins from merchants that are actually closed. Right. Now, the next 2 phases pretty much work together. You're going to prepare your hand and take actions. So, first thing you're doing here is you're drawing up to your hand limit.
Now, what you'll have is a set of cards in front of you. All players will play their cards face up, and these cards initially are your starting cards during the first hand. And again, these are your character cards that you invoke to perform various actions. Now, many of these cards have multiple actions on them, and you can perform at most 1 action from each character card. If you choose not to perform any, that's okay as well. But if you choose to perform an action, let's take a look at a simple one here. This is the city guard, and what I can do is I can spend this amount to get this benefit. Now, I can move my cube up 1 on the appeal track if I spend or accept 1 favor. And this is the problem in the game is you have to take favors oftentimes in order to get things done. Now, like we know in real life, and there's the favor card. When you take a favor, you often have to repay it later.
Yes, you do.
So if I were to invoke the city guard to try to move my cube up 1 on the appeal track, I would either have to take a favor, or the gray market allows me to exchange a certain number of goods for a favor and then not have to take the favor. And so you start out with a 4 to 1 ratio. I could get rid of 4 goods and then get this action without having to have a favor taken.
Indeed.
Now, there are some that are a little bit more complicated. If you look at this footpad, I could place an agent, and that's one of these guys who sells black market goods. I could take 2 favors or sell twice as much as my gray market ratio here. Or if I already have an agent out there, I could spend nothing to move him around. And we'll talk about what these guys do in a bit. Now, the problem with taking favors is that after you're finished with taking whichever actions you want to, invoking which characters you want to, you will take all these and put these on the discard side of your player mat. Now, when you eventually run out of cards in your draw pile, you will shuffle these back, all the cards in your discard pile, and make a new draw pile. And that will include any favors you have taken in the process. Now, what happens is in the future, when you draw your cards up to your hand size, if you have any favors,
they dirty up your hand.
They dirty up your hand. For those of you familiar with deck builders, you know this concept of deck thinning, and this works in the exact opposite way. Favors create a much dirtier hand.
All kinds of bulk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty bad.
The good side is you don't have to do anything special to repay a favor.
Right.
It just goes away. The bad side is it means you have drawn one less character that you can invoke to do a cool action.
Or 3 less characters. I mean, you have like 2 actions you can perform this turn because you had so much bulk in your hand.
In fact, one time when I played, I had actually 4 favors and just 1 character I could invoke.
And having 4 favors is a way to allow you to get rid of guild members.
Yeah, and when things are that bad, the way that Plunderbund offsets it is like, yeah, your hand was pretty bad this time around, but that when that configuration comes around, if you have 4 or more favors there, you can actually thin your deck a little bit, not just by getting rid of those 4 favors, but by dismissing or firing one of your crew.
And now it's all about earning goods. You're going to take a look at the price and the quality competition track. And based on where your cube is placed on those tracks will determine how many goods you're going to receive. Those numbers are in brown on the side of the track. So you definitely want to move up that track as fast as you can for numerous reasons, but getting more goods is crucial. And then finally, you're going to increment the month and move the start player token.
At the end of 3 months, it's the end of the season, and it's time for a tally phase. The way a tally phase works is that this is your opportunity for your racketeers to extort your merchants and for your agents to sell black market goods to them. So beginning with the first city over here, the first merchant rather, you will work through each of the merchants, skipping the ones that are closed, and if each player or any player has a racketeer in that merchant's location, they have the opportunity to take one of the demand tokens. Now, these demand tokens, let's quickly talk about what these do. These demand tokens represent what the merchant is looking for. And this is what he's looking for when you're trying to sell in black market goods.
Yeah. And they directly relate to the competition tracks.
Exactly. So these green, the green demand coins represent things he's looking for that are in good price. Basically, give me something cheap because I'm reselling it. The charcoal track or the charcoal color tokens represent things he's looking for that are high quality. The appeal track represents, obviously, appeal, something that looks really good. And the ingenuity track might be, hey, I want something that's a cool gadget.
Clever.
Yes, exactly. So you get to choose whatever is available at the merchant location if you have a racketeer there, and you will put that particular demand token in front of you. And this will continue throughout all the locations on the board until you've completed that. And then each player will get 2 reputation points for each of these tokens that he has extorted from one of the merchants. Now, keep in mind, each player can have, there can be at most 1 racketeer in a merchant location. If you put a racketeer in a location that already has a racketeer, that racketeer, he has to run away to the hideout that's in that particular quadrant of the city. After all the racketeers have extorted, now it's time for various players to attempt to sell goods, black market goods, to the merchants. And the way this works, and this is where the competition tracks come into play. For each demand token that's at that merchant, you will look at that and say, who's got the highest score on the various competition track, or the
highest rank.
The highest rank in the associated competition track. So let's say I got this green one. I would first look to whoever has the highest rank on the price competition track, and that player has the first option of trying to sell a good for this demand, basically fulfill this demand. If he wants to do that, he'll put that in front of him, and he needs to be able to place one of the goods from his warehouse onto that in order to be able to sell a good. Now, maybe I don't have enough goods. If I don't, I might say, well, I'd like to, but I can't. Then the option goes to the next ranked person on that particular competition track. Now, this goes through all the merchants on the board, and then each player who's been able to fulfill these demand coins will get 1 reputation point.
Right. And again, that's why those actions are so important and strategic. As you play, you're going to be moving these agents into different areas. You're going to be placing those racketeers and chasing away other racketeers.
Exactly.
And you really have to be mindful about when and how you place those different racketeers and invoke those actions to move those agents.
Right. You might say, hey, there's a demand coin that I simply can't get because let's say I'm the yellow player here on the ingenuity track. There's no way I can compete with my agents because obviously the red and the blue players will get first.
Yeah.
But I can send a racketeer there amongst the competitive agents, and the racketeer will get first choice, no matter where you are on these.
Right.
So that's a cheap way of getting potentially a lot of coins.
Now, after the tally phase and at the beginning of each season, you're going to have a chance to recruit, get more cards in your hand. Now, getting these cards is not going to require that you pay anything for them. Right. However, you will go around the table in start order and then reverse order because you're going to get 2 cards. Now, there's a set of agent cards that are standard, and then based on player count will determine what other cards are going to be available. But you'll turn those other cards over based on the player count plus 1. And everyone has a choice here as you move around the table, deciding either agents or one of these new character cards to come into your action pool. And there's just a lot of different options here, a lot of choices. And again, a lot of the actions you'll be performing is moving up on these competition tracks. So there's a lot of trade-offs here, and there's some really special powers that allow you to unlock merchants, things of that nature that were previously locked in the game, right? So there's just a lot of options to consider, a lot of different actions, and some really strategic things that you're going to have to be looking for when you're getting these new cards.
Additionally, these new recruit cards come with something called synergy. In many cases, these new recruits can be paired with some of your starting cards, and they will let you perform the starting card action for free without any favor or any goods having to be spent, which really is. So you can't always necessarily guarantee they're going to come up in your hand together. But if one of these new recruits does, you basically overlap them to indicate that the new recruit has somehow expedited or facilitated that starting card action. But you still get to perform the action on the recruit card. So it's the best of both worlds, and you save some money in the process.
It's really powerful, actually.
It is, and this should be taken into account when you're choosing amongst the recruits or the agents.
And then after the 4th and final phase, you're going to total up all your points. And along with the points you've been gathering throughout the game, you're going to look at your different areas of the board because you're going to look for majority of control in these areas, which give you the most in the turf war. And there's different levels of points in these turf wars, and you really want the maximum points that you can get here. You'll total those up, and you'll score across the board. And then, of course, anybody who has in their deck favor is going to get negative points for each favor card in your deck. And the player with the most points is going to be the big boss, the big top dog of the city. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, this game has a lot of decision making, a lot of actions that you can tap into, and that synergy that it creates in some of those cards is really powerful. Now, I have to give mad props once again for the characters, the deluxe figures with the flat cap. That's so cool, right?
And I like it even though there are no figures that have a bald head. Now, maybe they do and you just don't see it under the hat. Right. I also like the fact that there are these difficult choices. You have this alternative of taking or giving away goods instead of taking favor. And at the end of the game, you might think, oh, okay, it's the end of the game. I'll just take a ton of favor, and that's not a problem.
Right.
And you want to keep the goods because you have an opportunity of selling a lot of goods at the end of the game. There are more goods available as the game progresses. But if you take a lot of favor, that doesn't go without cost because at the end of the game, you have to pay points.
Indeed. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support.
That's right.
So I think that's it from us.
Yep.
And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.